So the question everybody seems to be asking now is, did the most recent patch for Space Marine 2 end up making the game easy? If you want a cut and dry answer, yes, it has. You can see that pretty objectively. But the real question should be whether or not the patch was good as a whole, whether or not easy is a good or bad thing for the time being. I've seen a hint of division start to rise because of this, and I wanted to go ahead and throw my hat in the ring. It's a much more gray area than people seem to think it is. It's not one step forward and two steps back, but it is somewhat like a drunk stumbling around trying to find their balance in the dark. I will only be talking specifically about the changes in gameplay, for the record, not any bugs or glitches that may have arisen. Simple reason being gameplay changes are intentional, while bugs are not, and they're kinda hard to corroborate. I also like to give devs grace periods the first couple patches. Today we are exploring that gray area that I mentioned earlier and discussing both the benefits and drawbacks of the new changes. I think the most logical approach is probably addressing the good, the bad, and then throw in whatever else I didn't get to at the end. So, let's do it. The first priority issue is obvious. It is the difficulty changes. Yes, the game got easier. That is a simple fact, as we already discussed. But easier doesn't necessarily mean it's gotten worse. Think of this through a lens of opportunity. We have just been granted a fantastic chance to level up shitty weaponry that we likely wouldn't have touched otherwise, and to provide a bit of solace to those who want more challenging enemies. On top of you getting a new difficulty in the future, I cannot imagine that all of these changes to weaken enemies will remain intact. This is one of those strike while the iron is hot kind of scenarios. Think about it. We have no clue what weapons are going to be improved or downgraded in the future. We can speculate, but that's about it. So we might as well take this opportunity where the enemies are weaker to capitalize on improving all weaponry. Because I assure you, when those times come, you will want the best possible armaments, and if by some chance you already have everything, well, this is where the bad news comes in. If you're looking for new stuff, I can't help you, and neither can the developers. You just have to stick around for the love of the games. It's sort of one of those you made your bed, now lie in it sort of things. Now this doesn't just apply to weapons, it extends out to classes as well. Let's take the Vanguard, for example, something I've been vocally critical about in the past. Vanguard was proficient in close range, but it was almost entirely predicated on the Melta's overhealth to be sustained. And as I'm sure some of us have seen, there has recently been a fair bit of Vanguard suffering adverse effects because of the fix to that weapon. However, there's something not many seem to realize here. With the new armor mechanic, you can just hit a parry that has a 7 business day window, and the Vanguard is fucking immortal when it gets crowded. Hell, everyone is immortal in crowds now. Those of you searching for an instant win switch, go to settings and look at your controls. It's the parry button. As long as small things are trying to kill you, dying is not an option anymore when you press that. Actually, you know what? Let's do a mini lesson here instead of me just telling you how you're not allowed to die. When you are surrounded by enemies, focus on fighting the biggest ones first. But remember, you are focusing, not dedicating all of your attention to that one target. The thought in the back of your mind while fighting will be hitting parries on anything that lunges towards your back. It is a seamless animation cancel for all of your attacks to spin and sit whatever jumped back down. This applies to all Minoris enemies, not only the ones that will leap at you and cause a full-on finisher animation. Fighting full-on Minoris is even simpler. Use chained heavy attacks to throw the crowd off in different directions. It's not meant to kill them so much as it is to disrupt them. Do this mindlessly while waiting for enemies to lunge and once again parry when they do that. Bear in mind, with both of these, you are more focused on parrying than attacking anything. Slashing, stomping, smashing, or stabbing are just the things you do while you're waiting to hit your counters. All things considered, I like the state of the game compared to where it was. If nothing else, people who weren't that good are now getting access to stronger weaponry. As someone who runs missions with a wide variety of people, I see that as entirely beneficial. If somebody isn't very good, at least they've now got a way to partially make up some shortcomings. If that somehow doesn't work, well, at the least it's a whole lot easier to carry people as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm no fan of compromising difficulty ceilings in the slightest, but one patch making things easier that will likely be followed by one making them more difficult is entirely acceptable, and not the big deal that some folks are making it out to be. I think the majority of us are on the same page about where challenge should hang around here. Enemies doing slightly less damage and having less durability works great, but we could definitely see the number of them go back up in the future. Now, this doesn't really fit anywhere, but can we fucking not with the Helldrake not doing fire damage on the laneway anymore? I thought we found 8 bullets on that entire path because the whole point was to dodge the fire and scramble to the safe room, not dodge the fire and then have teleporting enemies survive it and try to molest you in the safe rooms. I mean, fucking shit, man. If that happens to me again, I'm gonna start returning the favor and make Rubric Marines start their own version of a Me Too hashtag. Little bastards. Anyway, now to the problem areas that very much mirror the benefits. Holy shit, the Chaos maps are more barren than Carol Burnett's womb. Last time I encountered something this empty, I was talking to a guy bragging about skill using a Melta. I swear, if he stood in between you and a Walmart, you could look in one ear and see straight out the other side to the greeter waving at you. Anyway, I feel like we could have made enemies weaker without having to compromise this level of difficulty. It's like I'm fighting a baby that just took a thumb straight to the soft spot at this point, and I'm really hoping that they just bump the actual quantity enemies up and not both the quantity and lethality, because they got it half right. At the end of the day, this team has a pretty good understanding of what the player base wants, and although it's a little unsteady, they seem to have the right idea toward balancing. They like to prefer to raise and lower enemies instead of going insane with all the weaponry, and it's been a while since developers realized a rising tide raises all ships, and it makes more sense to weaken enemies instead of overcharge weaponry. I suppose the important takeaway here is have a little faith and don't lend too much of an ear to doomers. Yes, they are a little jaded, and for good reason, because a lot of studios have fucked over a lot of good games in the past, but these developers are listening to the community and they have a grasp on sensible balancing. They're just looking to find their stride right now. Also, while you still have the opportunity to expeditiously level weapons, my recommendation is to act upon it. Use the underwhelming gun or class that you thought would be cool. By the time the game gets more challenging, the variant you may have might actually be worth a damn. With all these new changes, I may even revisit the Vanguard in a video. However, I will more than likely be going over class synergies or something of the like instead. Or, fuck it, you tell me what you want to see in the comments. These videos are for you. Otherwise, the only thing I have left to say is join the Discord if you're an adult and you want some solid people to play with, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.